Exposed, the sinister force haunting Montana's hikers' spine-chilling secrets discovered. The mountains loomed high above Silver Creek, cloaked in shadows that danced ominously at dusk. Whispers echoed through the quaint town, chilling the bones of every resident. Hikers were disappearing, swallowed by the very trails that once boasted laughter and adventure. Emily Carter felt it deep in her gut, the gnawing fear that roots itself in every parent's heart. Her children, Ben and Lucy, played in the backyard, their giggles floating on the cool evening air. But instead of safety, a heavy weight settled on her chest. One fateful evening, as she sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the trees, an unsettling sensation crept over her. The air thickened, suffocating in its silence. It felt wrong, like the mountains were watching her, waiting. Her eyes darted toward the tree line. There, she spotted something a-shimmer on an aspen tree. Curiosity pulled her in. As she stood before the towering tree, each scratch in the bark twisted her insides. Words emerged from the wood, as if bleating out secrets. "Leave this place, they are watching." A jolt raced through her. What kind of sick joke was this? Emily's heart raced as she glanced around, feeling the invisible eyes. A chill unwound around her, knitting itself into the fabric of her thoughts. With each day that followed, her friends wore uncanny faces. The warm smiles from the community shifted into wary glances. The town's charm seemed to twist into a mask of unease. Whispers swept through the grocery line, tales of Joshua, the outdoor shop owner. He'd been kind once, offering advice and gear for their hikes, but now every friendly nod burrowed into paranoia. Was he hiding secrets behind that charming grin? Nightmares gripped her sleep, betraying her with images of shadows lurking just beyond sight, the laughter of her children stained with terror. She strained to surveil Ben and Lucy, their carefree innocence fading into fearful murmurs. The backyard, once their sanctuary, morphed into a prison. Shadows seemed to stretch with claws, reaching for them, whispering threats hidden deep in the night. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. It all came to a head during a hike, the woods thickening around them like a drawn veil. As dusk settled, a rustling skittered through the pines, heart-stopping, bone-chilling. Was it just an animal, or something worse? Then, a blood-curdling scream sliced through the quiet, breaking the fragile atmosphere. Emily spun around, pulse racing, fear surging like a tidal wave. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of a figure darting through the trees, swift, shadowy, all too familiar. The folklore she had thought was just a tale echoed back, revealing a savage truth she couldn't deny. In that instant, Emily's breath clouded with terror, realizing they were no longer alone. Whatever lurked in the dark woods had found them. With her children's laughter warped into screams of despair, Emily stood paralyzed. She might be losing them to something far more twisted than her worst fears, and the question hung heavy in the air: could she protect them when the very ground they walked on became a grave for those who trespassed? Emily's mind raced, her heart pounding relentlessly against her chest. A primal instinct screamed at her to run, yet she felt an icy grip on her legs, freezing her in place. The sound of her children's terrified cries sent a surge of fear through her. It was as if their joy had been transformed into a dark symphony, echoing through the woods and drowning in despair. "Ben! Lucy!" she shouted, each syllable catching in her throat. The trees swallowed her voice, absorbing it like blood into the earth. Panic crept up her spine, and she finally broke into motion. She turned back toward her kids, but the path felt distorted and foreign, branches clawing at her arms as she pushed through. Emerging into a clearing bathed in sliver moonlight, she caught sight of them, her children, eyes wide and fixed on something behind her. They stood frozen, small and vulnerable, while the malevolent presence lurked just beyond the trees. Emily turned slowly, dread coiling in her gut. The figure waited, waiting for that moment of weakness, ready to snatch away everything she loved. She could barely make out its shape, a silhouette draped in darkness, its edges dancing as if charged with a life of their own. Something wicked flickered behind its haunted form, glimmers of pale light casting ominous hues against the midnight sky. The air felt heavier, thick like smoke, wrapping around her like a shroud. "Mom," Ben finally managed to squeak out, the pure fear lacing his voice curdled her soul. A scream erupted from Emily, instinctively covering the gap between her and her children. "Run!" she screamed, muscles pulling her toward them. She yanked their arms, steering them wildly as they stumbled back toward the safety of the hiking trail. But the malevolent force moved with unnatural speed, darting between trees, closing the distance effortlessly. Emily glanced over her shoulder, dread seizing her heart. She nearly stumbled as she saw it, a ghastly grin spreading across the figure's face. It was too grotesque, too twisted to belong to the creature of shadow, but there it was, taunting her. Images from her nightmares rushed back, every whisper, every half-formed thought about the woods. Had she ignored the warnings? Everyone had been right to fear this place. No wonder hikers disappeared, they were drawn into its grasp, twisted into shadows along the very paths she once loved. "Faster!" she cried, pulling on their hands as they moved deeper into the trees. The sensation of cold breaths danced against her neck, and the branches seemed to grasp at her clothes, willing her to stop, to give in as they burst out onto the main trail. Daylight still clung to the edges of the sky, but there was no comfort in its glow. The surrounding hills loomed with an oppressive weight, watching her every move. The suffocating silence returned, only now it felt thicker, almost mocking. Breathless, she wheeled around, scanning the shadows for the figure. Nothing. Just the wind rustling through the leaves, like a taunting laugh. Had she truly escaped? Or had it merely retreated, biding its time for the next strike? The weight of dread sat heavy on her chest, urging her to flee back towards the security of the town. But she couldn't shake the feeling that danger still lurked among the shadows, among the whispers. As she led Ben and Lucy back, a single thought gripped her. Who would believe her? As she reached the edge of the woods, an unsettling realization dawned. The townsfolk, Joshua among them, had their own secrets buried. What if this was just the beginning of a darkness that spread far beyond the trails? What if they were all in danger, and she was too late to save them? In the fading light, Emily's legs trembled as the ground beneath her seemed to pulse with an otherworldly rhythm, striking a gruesome melody that hinted at horrors yet to come. Emily stumbled through the underbrush, Ben and Lucy tugging at her hands while panic drove them forward. The dying light of dusk lingered on the horizon, but the woods felt unnaturally dark. Thick shadows engulfed the familiar trails, closing in around them like a tightening noose. The quiet pressed in, suffocating and oppressive, as if the forest itself stilled to watch. "Mom, what was that?" Ben's voice trembled, a thin thread of fear woven through it. "I don't know. Just keep moving," Emily replied, forcing strength into her voice even as dread churned in her stomach. They were out, at least for now, but the memory of that monstrous grin branded the inside of her eyelids. Her heart pounded with the rhythm of their flight, echoing the dread that followed them too closely. They broke free from the clutches of the forest and stood at the edge of the dirt road leading into town. The facade of safety was but a frail promise. Flickering lights of distant houses lined the street, orange and yellow spots against the growing darkness like fireflies awaiting a lull in the storm. Emily's chest tightened. She glanced back at the trees. No movement, but she felt it, the weight of unseen eyes, the lurking inevitability of the dark. "Mom!" Lucy chirped, breaking the silence, a sweet sound that turned bitter in its innocence. "Can we go home now?" Home. The word echoed like a sweet, haunting melody. Yet, images of the figure swam in her mind, its wicked laugh rolling in the wind, its presence a reminder of yet unknown horrors. "Just a bit farther," Emily said, forcing her legs to move forward. She couldn't let them sense her fear. Not now. A mother's instinct was to protect she'd face whatever lay ahead. For them, the moment they stepped foot into town, a shroud of normalcy fell, but it felt like a lie. Neighbors strolled, oblivious, as if nothing had occurred in the woods. The laughter of children mingled with the hum of conversation, but a disquiet filled her, frayed edges creeping into her consciousness. "Did you see the woods?" she began, struggling to find the words. Each phrase was a breath tightened by confusion. "They aren't safe." People shook their heads, used to tales being spun by the scared or superstitious. "Oh, Emily, don't let those stories get to you," one woman chuckled, brushing aside her concerns like dust. Despite the smile, a flicker of doubt crossed the woman's eyes. Was it disbelief or something darker? Joshua, reliable Joshua, approached, his brow knitted in concern. "You all right?" he asked, but she saw the flicker of something deeper as he looked past her to the woods. "We need to talk," Emily said, gripping Ben and Lucy's hands tighter. The kids saw it too. "There's something out there." He paused, searching her face. "You're not serious, deadly serious." Something inaudible clutched at her voice, desperation clawing at her senses. She couldn't shake the feeling that Joshua already knew, suspicion thrumming through their conversation. Just then, a loud crash resonated in the distance, a sound too unnatural for the sleepy town. It shattered their fragile calm. People turned, eyes widening. Emily's breath came quicker as a gust of wind swept through, biting at her skin, as though the woods exhaled a warning. "Get inside!" Joshua shouted, a command riddled with urgency. The fear in his eyes mirrored her own, and she felt it in the air, an unsettling shift, an undercurrent of something sinister approaching. Emily's heart sank as she turned, scanning the faces of her neighbors, suddenly suspect. Were there hidden truths behind their smiles, too? Could she trust anyone? A guttural growl rippled through the air, stemming from the woods, sending a chill straight down her spine. The ground trembled beneath her feet as shadows slithered toward the town, hungry for the light. More screams erupted, breaking the pretense of normalcy. Emily's instincts screamed at her to hurl her children toward safety, but dread had sewn itself into the fabric of her being. "Run!" she cried, dashing toward the nearest house, but an unshakable dread told her this was just the beginning. What had she awakened? What wickedness stitched together the town and the woods? As Emily looked back toward the forest, a figure cloaked in darkness stepped from the shadows. The figure loomed just beyond the edge of the trees, its shape flickering like a candle in the wind. As shadows leaped and shrouded the air, Emily's breath hitched in her throat. It wasn't human. A mix of instinct and survival kicked in. She turned back towards the house, willing her legs to move faster, to forget the darkness creeping relentlessly closer. "Mommy!" Lucy screamed, her small voice piercing through the chaos around them. Emily's heart sank as she felt her daughter's grip tighten. "Stay close, children!" Emily barked, urgency coursing through her veins like icy water. Behind her, the growl rolled again, resonating with a ferocity that made the ground vibrate beneath them. Joshua rushed ahead, eyes darting to the woods. "We need to barricade." His military instincts kicked in. He started banging on the nearest door, shouting for help. Fear choked his voice when no one answered. Emily pulled her children closer and scanned the surroundings. Neighbors hurried indoors, closing curtains to shut out whatever evil was unraveling right before their eyes. None looking back. None offering help. Panic melded into a deeper horror, a collective denial, a refusal to confront the lurking terror. "Get inside!" Emily shouted at a house whose windows were still lit. She nudged Ben ahead, ushering Lucy along with her. The door swung open, revealing Marcy, her skin pale and eyes wide. "Emily! What is going on? Get us in. Now!" As the door cracked wider, something from the woods shrieked, a wailing noise that made Emily's blood run cold. Marcy staggered back, fear etched across her features. "What is that? Get inside!" Ben cried, pulling at Emily's sleeve, urgency merging with his own rising terror. Marcy stepped back, watching the encroaching darkness. The shadows had taken on a life of their own, slinking closer, as if tasting the air, sniffing out their unease. Emily shoved her children through the doorway, pushing Marcy aside as she rushed into the safety of her house. She slammed the door just as the growl came again, now a low rumble vibrating straight through the wood. "Bar it!" Emily spun to face Marcy. "Lock the windows!" With frantic movements, they shoved the couch against the door, heartbeats deafening in the air that felt thick and nauseating. The lights flickered, threatening to plunge them into darkness. Then, silence fell like a shroud. It pressed in on them, heavy and oppressive. They huddled close, breathless. "What is happening?" Lucy whimpered, her small frame shaking. "There was something in the woods," Emily whispered, almost to herself. "I don't know what it was, but it wanted us." Ben's eyes darted toward the window. "It's out there, Mom, I saw it." Before Emily could respond, a thumping noise reverberated against the door, a monstrous rhythm that shook her resolve. They all froze, eyes wide, breath held. Marcy turned pale, her knees trembling as shadows danced behind the curtains. "What do we do?" "Stay quiet," Emily urged, panic lacing her voice. She knew they couldn't let the thing hear them. But tension screamed through the room, every fleeting second stretching into eternity. A clawed hand scraped against the wooden door, and a sinister whisper echoed from the other side. "Let me in, let me play." The voice was dark, a sinister lull, enticing yet terrifying. Emily's stomach turned. "Hide!" she urged, pushing her children behind the couch. But the shadows outside began to shift, growing closer. Desperation clawed at her. "This isn't how it ends," she muttered, forcing the dread from her voice. She needed a plan. Suddenly, the growling morphed into a laughter that chilled her bones. The sound twisted through the thin walls, mingling with the wind, a mocking serenade. Emily felt the fabric of reality buckle under the weight of that sinister laugh. But what awaited them on the other side of that door? Could they survive whatever darkness had been unleashed? As the laughter crescendoed, the windows shattered, and the night opened its mouth wide. A flash of light pierced the darkness, revealing dozens of shapes, gleaming eyes watching from every angle. Was she too late to protect her children? And then, a terrible quiet descended, as Emily realized it was just the beginning of something far worse. The air grew thick with the scent of fear, each breath tasting metallic and stale. Emily's heart thundered, hammering against her ribs as the sound of shattering glass rolled through the house like thunder. Pieces of the windows glimmered on the floor like jagged teeth, reflecting the dim light that flickered uncertainly from the ceiling. "Mom!" Lucy's small voice was barely above a whisper, but it was the pleading in her tone that sliced deeper than any shatter of glass. "Stay down," Emily hissed, an overwhelming urge to protect gripping her tighter than ever. She moved instinctively to cover Lucy and Ben, a fierce instinct igniting the fire within her. The shadows outside were no longer just shapes, they were demons gathering, eager for carnage. The door rattled violently, a wicked laugh echoing on the other side, harsh and alien. "Emily, Emily, let me in," it beckoned, each syllable dripping with malice. With every passing second, desperation clawed at her throat and squeezed her heart, stealing the air right from her lungs. "Is it still there?" Marcy whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know." Emily could feel the walls creaking under the pressure of whatever lurked outside. They needed a plan, they needed to fight back. But how? Fumbling through her thoughts, a singular idea flickered to life. "The cellar!" she shouted, adrenaline surging through her as urgency took precedence. "We can hide down there until morning." "But what if it finds us?" Ben stammered, eyes wide, the shadows closing in around him. "We need to hurry." she urged, already moving toward the back door, gesturing the others to follow. Marcy nodded, fear plastered across her face as they scrambled toward the kitchen, Emily's heart racing as she tried to balance hope and despair. Quickly, she pushed, grabbing the doorknob. The rumble of laughter outside contorted into something almost human, mocking their every move. Go! Go! They stumbled down the stairs into the cellar, damp air slapping them in the face like a sinister breeze. The heavy door creaked shut behind them, blocking out the haunting laughter. They were safe for now. Darkness enveloped them, a blanket thick and suffocating, broken only by the light of a small kerosene lamp that flickered in the corner. Shadows played tricks, stretching against the walls, but Emily focused on her children. Lucy huddled against her, tears wetting the fabric of Emily's shirt, while Ben paced in tight circles, eyes darting to shadows. "Can you hear it?" Ben finally whispered, voice trembling. The growling had settled into a persistent thrum, as if the very shadows were alive, circling them, hungry. Emily pressed her lips together, trying to block out the sound that clamored like nails against her conscience. "We just need to wait it out," she assured, though doubt gnawed at her. But the shadows were stubborn, they slithered around the edges of the light, drawing nearer. She could almost feel the darkness breathing, waiting to pounce. Suddenly, the sound of scratching, like nails against wood, began to rise. It wasn't outside anymore. It was here with them. Panic surged through her as she felt cold fingers of fear inching up her spine. "We need to get out," Marcy gasped, backing away towards the stairs. "Don't open it." Emily shot back, horror clenching around her throat. The scuttling grew louder, the shadows brightening now, revealing a lowly figure silhouetted against the corner of the cellar. What is that?" Lucy whimpered, hiding her face against Emily's arm. Emily squinted into the dim light, and slowly, she realized its shape was not just darkness it had form. A grotesque face twisted in the dark, grinning with malicious delight that in a heartbeat. They were no longer hiding. They were hunted. "All of you shall play." The voice slithered through the air, silky and cold. "Let the games begin." Emily's heart thundered louder than anything she had ever heard. She opened her mouth to scream, but nothing came out. As the figure lunged forward, shadows erupted, and the cellar plunged into chaos. Would they survive the night, or had they awakened something far more sinister? And among the cacophony of fear, a new chilling question loomed: what if the darkness wasn't just outside but something much deeper? The shadows surged, writhing like panicked snakes, and Emily felt terror claw through her like icy fingers. The grotesque face loomed closer, full of malevolence, each detail sharpening in the dim light: the hollowed cheeks, the mismatched eyes glimmering with a feral hunger. "Run!" Emily's voice shattered the stillness, a jagged echo that cut through the chaos. She grasped Lucy and Ben, yanking them away from the encroaching darkness. They dashed toward the creaking stairs, adrenaline fraying the edges of her sanity as the figure lunged forward, the sound of its laughter rattling her bones. Marcy floundered behind them, disoriented, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We can't leave now," Emily screamed, propelling them all toward the door, error propelling her forward. They crashed into the door like a wave against the shore, desperation driving their escape. Would the door hold? Would it be enough? The scratching intensified, relentless, as if the darkness itself was clawing at them, angry and relentless. Emily slammed the door shut behind them, the thud echoing eerily in the narrow confines of the cellar. She turned to the frantic energy surrounding her, a family locked in a chamber of horrors. "Ben, get that chair," she ordered, her heart racing as she shoved it against the door. It scraped across the floor with a groan, while Marcy pressed against the door, eyes darting from the cracks to the creeping darkness beyond. Lucy crawled into Emily's lap, trembling like a cornered rabbit. "Mom, it wants to play," she whispered, her voice cracking. "No, it wants to kill us," Ben shouted, his voice full of a rage born out of fear. The shadows swirled like a living thing, eager and insatiable. "Stop. Emily yelled. "We need to stay quiet. It might think we're gone." But silence was fleeting. The malignant growl grew louder, mixing with the rustle of shadows, claws scuttling, clamoring for attention. It was as if every dark corner was alive, eager to join their tormentor in a symphony of dread. Then came a sound that froze Emily's blood like a child's giggle, too innocent for the horror that enveloped them. The air thickened as the voice echoed through the narrowing breach between them and their attacker. "Oh, but this game is just beginning." Emily felt the weight of dread settle into her stomach. She forced herself to look around. There had to be something they could use, anything that could serve as a weapon. A rusty pitchfork leaned in the corner, and a broken shovel rested against the wall. Adrenaline coursed through her veins. "Marcy, grab that shovel," Emily commanded, holding Lucy tight, her heart racing. Fear flared within her, but even more, a flicker of fierce resolve ignited. They were not just going to hide, no, this was a battle now. Marcy hesitated, staring into the darkness. But what if? No what ifs. Emily snapped, voice steadying, fear melting into courage. "We cannot let it control us. It's just a thing." But just as she finished, the cellar lights flickered ominously, plunging them into deeper darkness. A low growl erupted, vibrating through the walls. She set her jaw, flicking her eyes toward what was happening in that inky blackness. Then suddenly a loud thud reverberated against the door, so powerful it nearly sent Emily staggering back. "Stay back!" she shouted, clutching Lucy tighter as she stood protectively before Ben and Marcy. The laughter echoed again, unsettling and sinister, slithering through the room. Shadows converged, and Emily's instinct screamed that it was no longer waiting. It was desperate, very much alive. "Open the door, Emily," it cooed, silky and seductive. "I can't. You're not getting in here," she countered, eyes wild. But then something shifted in the darkness, shifting the very air around them. The shadows expanded and twisted grotesquely. An intense chill blanketed the room, and coughs of breath turned into mist. Emily's heart raced, pulse pounding in her ears. The darkness was creeping, slipping through cracks, and her instincts screamed anew. "Mom!" Lucy cried, her small voice pierced by sheer terror. Emily felt the panic swell within her but held it at bay. She pointed toward an old wall cabinet. "We can hide in there. Just for a moment." Marcy nodded, fear rippling through her, but they were running out of time. As the door buckled under pressure, Emily grabbed Ben and Lucy, and together they slipped into the cramped space. "Shoo," she whispered, pressing her fingers to her lips, listening as the thrumming sounds intensified. The footsteps outside grew heavy, deliberate, stalking just beyond the door. With a final, echoing crash, the door burst open, revealing chaos and a black shape towering in the entrance. "Where are you?" it taunted, voice silky dark, weaving around them like smoke. The game was far from over, and as the shadows poured in, all Emily could do was cling to her children and hope they weren't too late. What piece of darkness would show itself next, and would they be able to escape what was now closing in on them? Emily's breath came in ragged gasps as she squeezed her children tighter. The air around them felt heavy, clinging, as if the very darkness was a living entity, inhaling and exhaling in a slow, menacing rhythm. She could feel Lucy's heart pounding against her chest, and Ben trembled beside them, his fingers digging into her arm. "Stay quiet," Emily hissed, the terror in her voice palpable. Each second stretched into eternity as they awaited the next move of their unseen enemy. The shadows poured into their makeshift sanctuary, snaking through the edges of the cabinet like predatory tendrils searching for prey. The figure lingered just outside, its silhouette a grotesque distortion of human shape. "I can smell your fear," it whispered, its voice curling around them like smoke. The innocent giggle rang out again, more sinister this time, echoing in the dark. Emily's pulse raced. "What do we do?" Marcy mouthed, her eyes wide with fear, searching Emily's for answers. Just listen," Emily whispered, her heart pounding in her ears. They had to survive this, but the thickening darkness made her doubt their chances. The shadows outside twisted, dark coiling figures warping to reveal sinister faces that seemed to taunt them, mouths stretching into mock smiles. Emily could feel her resolve wavering, an icy sweat trickling down her spine as despair threatened to overtake her. Suddenly, the shadow lurched. It lunged toward the cabinet, nails scraping along the wood in a desperate frenzy. "Let me in!" It screeched, an unholy mix of hysteria and rage. "Hold on!" Emily shouted. She shifted, adrenaline coursing through her. With a swift movement, she gripped the rusty pitchfork she had seen earlier. "Back!" she cried, urging Marcy and the kids to press deeper into the shadows of the cabinet. The door rattled violently. "Open up!" The taunting tones dripped with malice, chilling her blood as she pressed herself against the door, using her weight to keep it shut. Every muscle in her body tensed as the air thickened with the weight of malevolence hovering right outside the barrier of their improvised protection. "Mom," Lucy whimpered, her innocent voice cutting straight through Emily's defensiveness. "No," Emily retorted, heartbreaking as she felt her daughter's anxiety radiate through their connection. "We can't give in. Not now." The laughter echoed again, a chilling sound that filled every crevice of the small space. "You think you can lock me out forever? This is just a game." Another violent thud reverberated through the cabinet, enough to shake loose a cloud of dust. Emily held her breath, feeling as if she could drown in despair. "Think. We need a distraction." Marcy suddenly piped up, her eyes darting. "What if we can lure it away from the door?" Emily hesitated. The shadows thickened, swirling and breathing. "How?" "Just throw something. Anything," Marcy urged, her eyes darting to the pitchfork. With a nod, Emily glanced around desperately before reaching for the broken shovel. "Okay, I'll toss this. When it goes for that, we make a break for the stairs." "Let us hope it works," Ben murmured, his fingers trembling. "On three," Emily whispered, bracing herself, her hands shaking. 1, 2. A sudden scrape echoed from within the darkness, making them falter. The creature seemed to sense their fear, slowing its assault just a heartbeat. 3. Emily shouted, launching the shovel with all her might. It arced beautifully, glinting momentarily in the dim light before clattering against the cellar floor far away. A sharp intake of breath followed by a deafening silence filled the space. "Get ready," Emily hissed as the figure turned its focus toward the noise, retreating like a snake poisoned by its own venom. Shadows curled inward, darting away from the cabinet as the creature hungrily pursued the shovel. "Now!" Emily urged, yanking the cabinet door open, limbs trembling as freedom sparked in her heart, but as they spilled out into the room, the shadows flickered in a chaotic whirl of black. Emily sensed danger lingering still, anticipation licking at the edges of her panic. All that stood between them and salvation was the crack of light from the door at the top of the stairs. "Run!" she cried, gripping Lucy's hand as they fled toward the stairs, only to find a barrier of shadows rising, solid and unyielding, blocking their narrow exit. "No, no," Emily gasped, skidding to a halt, each frantic heartbeat echoing through the confined space. The creature emerged again, its laughter ringing out once more, echoing with a bone-chilling finality as they faced the wall of darkness, the smirk woven into its shrouded face piercing straight into the depths of Emily's soul. What could defeat this insatiable darkness, and how far would they have to go to escape its vicious grasp? The air felt thicker now, the shadows closing in around them like a beast ready to strike. Emily's heart thudded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat urging her to take action even as sheer terror threatened to immobilize her. The children clutched her tightly, their fear palpable. She could hear Ben's breath hitching, while Lucy buried her face against her mother's shoulder, too frightened to look. "What do we do?" Marcy whispered, her eyes darting to the oppressive darkness blocking their escape. "Find something," Emily urged, her voice low but fierce. They had to act, they couldn't let the creature know their fear. Marcy started rummaging through the cramped space, her hands trembling like leaves in a storm. Suddenly, Emily felt an urgent tug at her sleeve. It was Lucy, her wide eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Mom, what if it knows where we are?" Lucy's voice quivered. "Focus, Lucy. We're stronger than it thinks," Emily replied, trying to instill a courage she barely felt herself. She reached down and grabbed the rusty pitchfork, its cold metal an anchor in her trembling hands. The giggle echoed again, sharper this time, like a knife slicing through the tension. "You think you can fight me? You belong to me now." The laughter twisted into something almost joyous, a sick parody of innocence that chilled Emily to her core. "Climb over here," Emily commanded, her mind racing for a plan to buy time. "We need to find a way around the shadows." Marcy and the kids squirmed, angling to squeeze through the tight spaces in the cellar. Emily's determination surged. If they could just create a distraction again, maybe they could slip past the entity looming before them. "Marcy, do we have anything?" she asked, panic creeping back in. Marcy fished out a jar filled with old nails and screws. "This might work, but it's not much." "It's enough," Emily exclaimed, her mind already crafting a plan. "On my count, we'll throw this and scramble past whatever cover we can find. We can't wait for it to make the first move." "Okay," Marcy replied, steeling herself. "Ready?" Emily raised her hands with the pitchfork, and Marcy clutched the jar. "On 3. 1, 2." Before they could hit 3, the creature shrieked, tearing through the air. "Why do you resist? I can taste your despair." The noise echoed off the cellar walls, causing Lucy to cry out. Emily's heart sank. Time was almost up. 3. She yelled, letting the pitchfork fly toward the darkness. Marcy immediately followed suit, hurling the jar with all her strength. The pitchfork clanged and slipped through the shadows, finding a target. The jar shattered with a loud crash, nails spilling like a chaotic fountain, a cacophony designed to attract attention. Emily seized the moment, determination fueling her as she lunged for her children. They scrambled as instinct took over, bolting toward the flickering light above. The shadows writhed, twisting into monstrous shapes that dove toward them. Emily felt it clawing at her, the icy fingers of fear grazing her back. "Run! Don't look back!" They surged towards the light, each step a desperate battle against the darkness that clung to their legs like quicksand. Just as they neared the stairs, an overwhelming force slammed into Emily, pushing her down. The pitchfork had not been enough to deter the creature that desired to devour them whole. "Mom!" Ben screamed. "Keep going!" she roared, forcing herself back up despite the crushing weight pinning her down. The children tumbled over each other, their tiny bodies fighting against the terror. With a primal scream, fueled by fear and love, Emily drove the pitchfork into the shadows where the creature writhed, hoping to pierce through the unseen horror. A deeper, more furious laughter erupted, echoing with a haunting finality that pierced through the chaos. "You think your tactics will save you? You're in my domain." The air quaked, and the shadows twisted further, crawling around Emily like vines, threatening to strangle any hope left in her heart. "Push through," she gasped, straining against the dark force enveloping her. But a new sound slithered into the mess, voices, whispering, darting around them, each more familiar than the last. Emily's mind whirled. The children. "We need to go." They need to, but then the grip of shadows tugged at her feet, painfully, aggressively. The whispering grew louder, like a chorus of screams mixed with mocking laughter. What had they awakened? What truths were buried beneath this malevolence? As they neared the top of the stairs, the last of the light flickered, the shadows reached for them, pulsating with an insatiable hunger. The children clawed their way to freedom, but Emily staggered, her breath catching. The laughter echoed louder, the walls of the cellar closing in as she fought against the disorienting darkness. "Emily!" Marcy shouted from above, her hand stretched out, hovering just out of reach. In that moment, Emily realized it was not just a physical fight for escape. It was a test of will, a harrowing battle against an enemy born from their own fears. She had to make a choice to fight, to break free, or to become a part of the darkness that wanted to consume them all. What happens next as Emily faces her greatest inner demons? Would she overcome, or would she succumb to the unknowable abyss of terror? The darkness surged like a living entity, twisting and writhing, eager to snatch Emily and consume her entirely. She could feel the tendrils of shadow gripping her, each movement a clawing reminder of the fear she fought to suppress. "Keep pushing," she shouted, her voice barely breaking through the chaotic echoes around them. Emily forced her body forward against the weight of despair, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadows wrapped tighter as if they could sense the flicker of her hope waning. Cold panic flooded her veins. She couldn't let the fear take root. Not now. Not ever. "Mom!" Ben sobbed, his voice a raw edge of terror that cut through her like a blade. The last thing she wanted was for the children to see their mother give in to this beast. "Go!" she screamed, and with a sudden surge of desperation, she pulled against the shadows around her legs. In that moment, something snapped. The pitchfork was no longer a tool, it was a shield and a weapon all at once. She thrust it into the dark mass at her feet, a primal instinct pushing her onward. The shrieks that erupted were deafening, a horrid howling that seemed to blend the cries of her children with the malevolent laughter of the creature. It was a cacophony of terror that made her blood run cold. "You refuse to accept your fate," it taunted, the voice weaving in and out of the oppressive dark. "Shut up," Emily shouted back, her voice a mixture of anger and courage. She wouldn't let it take her, she wouldn't let it take her children. Finding strength from the well of motherly love, she finally managed to free one foot, then the other. With a wild glance behind her, she saw the writhing mass of shadow flicker with each movement, like an illusion trying desperately to reclaim its grip. "Marcy! Grab Lucy and Ben!" Emily yelled. The shadows trembled, as if the mere command of unity created a fracture in their power. Marcy's eyes widened in understanding. "Hold on to each other," she shouted, grabbing Lucy and Ben's hands. They were small but full of an unyielding spirit just like their mother. Emily let out a horrible cry, the pitchfork slashing through the oppressive darkness once more. The laughter turned into a fury of shrieks, furious and frantic. "You think you can just leave?" And then a bright flash, light burst into the cellar, momentarily illuminating the murky depths of its corners. It felt like a crack in the wall of despair, a spark of hope when they truly needed it. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in outrage, retreating back into the labyrinth of the cellar's depths. Emily's breath hitched. Was it true? Had they found a way out? "Come on," she urged, her heart racing as she surged toward the light, dragging the children behind her. The pulse of darkness screamed around them, but now it felt angry and frantic, unstable. They darted through the last remnants of the cold, clamoring silence, desperate to escape before the shadows could regroup, but as they finally reached the stairs, each step upward felt like a heavy toll. She could see Marcy's expression harden, panic lurking behind her eyes as they climbed higher. Footsteps echoed behind them, furious feet racing toward the fading glow. "Don't stop," Emily cried as they rushed toward the door. Their hands gripped the wooden frame, raw against the splinters. She threw her weight against it, and it creaked open, bathing them in a warm, golden light. Around them, the outside world breathed heavy and cold. The sun, low in the sky, cast long shadows that danced unnervingly across the ground. They spilled out, gasping for air, but the relief was short-lived. The laughter echoed again, sounding distorted through the light, reverberating in the distance like a sinister omen. Emily turned, searching for Marcy, the children at her side. What was that?" she gasped, horrified. "But why do they still feel so close?" Marcy whispered, her voice trembling as dread pooled in her stomach. The trees surrounding them reacted to the sound, rustling in the wind, branches creeping and curling almost with a will of their own. Emily's chest tightened as she felt a heavy weight press down over them, an unseen presence pushing against the light, a promise lurking in the shadows. "What do we do now?" Ben asked, wide-eyed and trembling. Innocence shattered. As the wind howled softly, almost too softly, Emily's mind raced with a terrifying thought: the creature could no longer reach them. But what if it could? What if it had unleashed something worse, something waiting eagerly in the depths of the forest, hungry for the taste of their fear? "Get inside. Now!" she yelled, urgency flooding her tone. But dread gripped her heart like a vice. What else awaited them in this cursed land? Would the shadows follow? Or was something much more sinister lying in wait? The children ran, but would they find safety or only deeper darkness? The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, yet Emily felt no warmth. The air still buzzed with a suffocating tension as they stumbled from the cellar. Marcy, still reeling from their escape, clutched her children tightly, her wide eyes scanning the encompassing woods with a mix of fear and disbelief. "Mom, what was that thing?" Ben's voice trembled, tears glistening in his eyes. Lucy, clinging to Emily's side, buried her face against her mother's waist. It's gone," Emily whispered, hope battling against the encroaching dread. But as she took a hesitant step toward the fading light, a chill clawed at her spine, wrenching her heart into knots. "No!" Marcy cried suddenly, eyes darting back toward the treeline. The laughter echoed again from the depths of the forest, carrying a mocking tone that made Emily's skin crawl. The shadows inched closer, creeping out as if summoned by a terrible force, an old evil awakened by their fear. "We need to go," Emily urged, gripping her children tighter. They had been through enough, and the thought of retreating back to the heart of darkness sent a shudder through her bones. The children nodded, and with a swift glance back at the trees still shrouded in that dark embrace, she turned and sprinted toward the town. The rhythmic thump of their feet echoed on the dirt road. Each step felt urgent, the need for safety intensifying with each moment they spent in the fading glow of daylight, but dread surged again when the rustle of leaves seemed to echo their hurried steps, a haunting reminder that they were not free yet. "Don't look back," Emily barked, her voice breaking the silence, raw with urgency. Marcy matched her speed, the two women driven by primal instinct to protect their children from whatever horror lingered just beyond sight. Finally, they reached the town, its familiar charm now warped by fear. Emily pushed through the trees lining the edge of the community until they broke into the open. The once lively streets felt eerily silent, shadows stretching across the pavement like fingers grasping at their heels. Neighbors watched from darkened windows, their faces obscured, every warning of "stay inside" ringing clear in the distance. No one moved. No one offered solace. "Why won't they help us?" Lucy whimpered, innocence cracking beneath the weight of reality. "They don't know," Emily muttered, trying to steady her racing heart, but her thoughts churned with doubt. "They don't know what's out there." Marcy moved to the nearest door, banging against it frantically. "Somebody! Let us in." But the silence pressed around them like a suffocating shroud. The only answer was the far-off laughter, echoing inside their minds. "Try another." Emily's voice broke through the panic. They had to find safety. Dread tugged at her soul. Doors opened reluctantly, revealing wary faces, eyes wide with disbelief. The locals were familiar yet distant. A mother stepped forward cautiously. "What happened?" "Evil." Emily spat, her gut twisting as she searched the crowd trying to see who might be affected. "Terror is bleeding into our lives, and it's not finished." But the town folk murmured, covering their children's ears, disbelief painting their features. "Just a story," one man claimed dismissively, "it's just tales. Nothing more." "Not anymore," Marcy yelled, her voice rising. "You need to believe us. We barely escaped with our lives." At that exact moment, the laughter returned, crisp and insistent. Townspeople flinched, glancing nervously toward the woods where dark shapes began to coalesce, an insidious reality creeping into their midst. Emily felt rage bubbling inside her. "See? You need to act. We need to get rid of it. Strength in numbers. Words bounced around among the crowd, denial clashing against fear. Cursed. One woman shouted. We can't go to the woods. There's nothing out there. That's what they said before, right? Emily shouted, her voice fierce. You want to stay in the dark? You want your children to vanish next? It's here and it's hungry. Just then, Joshua emerged, visibly shaken but resolute. She's right, he spoke, drawing attention as he raised his hand for silence. What they faced, it's something more than folklore. The townsfolk shifted uncomfortably, whispers scattering through gathered families. Faces betrayed their disbelief. Could they really face this together? Would they only wait for shadows to collect them one by one? We need to gather everyone, Joshua urged, his voice ringing with authority. If we're to fight this, we do it together. We confront whatever is haunting us. He gave Emily a nod, a silent promise exchanged. The residents rallied reluctantly, faces twisted with uncertainty yet igniting a flicker of determination that surged through them. Gripping hands exchanged glances, solidarity forming in their resolve. As they prepared to venture back toward the woods, Emily turned to her children. Stay close, okay? She pulled them tighter against her chest, her fear almost tangible. They nodded, wide-eyed, and together the villagers, the victims, the survivors took a step toward the darkness where their fear resided, where laughter echoed in wicked delight. Tonight, we reclaim our home, Emily declared, the weight of their resolve surrounding them like a shield. The shadows would learn they had awakened a force far greater than their own terror. They'd fight with everything they had, together. Just as their first step crossed onto the threshold of the forest's edge, a voice rippled through the group like wildfire, heating them up in the cool evening air. Are we ready? Joshua called, eyes blazing, conviction thrumming through the air. Ready. They roared back, an eruption of defiance. The shadows would not claim them without a fight. Not anymore, and as they ventured deeper into the consuming dark, the laughter morphed into fury, a challenge made clear. This time, fear would not prevail. Emily held on fiercely. She was more than a mother, she was a warrior of light. And tonight, they would fight back. Time to finish this. If you enjoyed this explosive conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories filled with fierce battles and powerful endurance. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others discover this journey. Flood the comments section with your reactions and your theories about what's next for these characters. Share your thoughts, don't hold back. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic battle against darkness. Let us stand together in this fight.